We are MERA25. We are the host for today, and we have very special guests I will quickly introduce to you today. And before starting, I just wanted to give a little introduction in German for everyone who just came. Ja, für uns ist das ein ganz besonderer Tag, dass wir Yanis Varoufakis heute hier haben. Das ist natürlich sicherlich auch der Grund, weshalb ihr heute alle gekommen seid. Für uns ist es aber ein zusätzliches Event, um einfach dem Thema Solidarität nochmal eine Bühne zu geben. Ja, weil uns ist wichtig zu sagen, wir sehen einfach politischen Rechtsruck, wir sehen, da passiert sehr viel und das sind Dinge, die wir nicht unterstützen können. Und wir solidarisieren uns mit emanzipatorischen und progressiven Bewegungen einerseits und wir sind andererseits eine Gruppe, die sich sehr stark für den Widerstand, also gegen die rechte Politik, stemmt. Und da können wir jeden brauchen und jede brauchen, die sich dafür engagieren will. Also einerseits ist uns wichtig zu sagen, dass wir uns solidarisch zeigen wollen mit progressiven Gruppen. Und das andere ist, dass wir alle, die hier da sind, einladen wollen, mit uns gemeinsam auf die Straße zu gehen für Proteste, Demonstrationen, Petitionen. Es gibt sehr viel, was man tun kann. Also wenn Sie jetzt heute nach Hause gehen, wenn ihr nach Hause geht und euch fragt, was kann man denn tun? Da passiert sehr viel und ich suche nach einer politischen Heimat, dann kommt gerne auf uns zu und führt das Gespräch. Wir sind hier heute nicht als Einzelperson. We're not here as single people, but we're here as a collective. We are a bunch of people who want to change politics, and I warmly invite you to come and join us in our fights for justice and against injustice. So that's all I wanted to say before introducing my dear guests. Today we will have a moderator, Lucy Kirstein. She will guide you through the evening. She's our favorite moderator because she has a good knowledge and she has a background in politics and economics. She has also worked for the OECD in Paris. She has studied in multiple countries, also as well in Israel. And she has this international perspective, and that's why I really value that you're here today. Let's give it a warm applause. And our second Spitzenkandidat candidate from Berlin traveled today. Here is Melanie Schweizer. Please welcome her. Melanie Schweizer has also a background in politics and law. She has also worked for the law firms, commercial law firms, as well as the court in Brandenburg, before joining the Federal Ministry of Labor. And that's why she has a lot of experience in politics and political science, and she can talk about our major Wahlkampfthemen from Berlin and for Germany. And then our final and most valuable guest is Yanis Varoufakis. I don't think I need to introduce him. He's a politician, author of non-fictional but also utopian books, like we have them here. You know them, Techno-Feudalism and another now. We just put them here in case you don't, you haven't read them, you can read them later. And yeah, so please give it a warm welcome to our guests.
Thanks very much, Ramona. Thanks for all the organizers, first of all. We're going to start a panel discussion, very lively one, and for that I'm asking our two speakers to the floor. Welcome to this panel. Yeah, wherever you like. I hope you can all see us, otherwise we have to stand up from time to time. I think we're here in the heart of Munich during very interesting times. We're here because we find ourselves in a world where war, economic injustice, rising authoritarianism threaten democracy and peace. While political leaders meet behind closed doors at the Munich Security Conference, discussing geopolitics through the lens of the military-industrial complex and really heavily influenced by militarization. We are really here today to offer an alternative, to offer a different perspective, one that puts solidarity, justice, and the interests of people before profits and military agendas. The idea of security, I believe, is redefined in very dangerous ways. More weapons, more surveillance, more military spending are being sold to us as stability, while economic inequality, environmental collapse, and democratic backsliding into what you have called techno-feudalism and really the oligarchy, we can call it now, seem to be none of their concern. Now we're here to discuss today with our esteemed guests how we can resist a system that prioritizes war over justice and division over solidarity. And solidarity is really our core topic today. Ramona already said that. Yanis, we really have the honor to have you here tonight in Munich this whole weekend, actually. Maybe we can start bold. What's your message to the leaders at Munich Security Conference? Why is a strong counter-narrative so important today?
Well, good evening, everyone. I'm going to just sit up here so I can see more of you. No, actually. Maybe stand. It's more stable to be standing, right? Well, good evening. Thank you so much for the introduction, for the question. Melanie, you are an inspiration, also thanks to you in the federal election. Look, Munich is blessed and cursed by the Munich Insecurity Conference, not security, insecurity, because this is what they do. They create insecurity to sell protection, which is the standard policy of the mafia. That's what the mafia does. So Munich is cursed by that, but it's blessed because there's always a reaction to every action, and we are the reaction. We are the demonstration. We are bringing to Munich, and you are hosting us, creating this synergy between the local demonstrators, the visiting demonstrators, to effectively say to them that we know what you've been up to. We know what you've been doing all this time. First, you've never missed a single opportunity to consolidate Europe, to unite Europe, one crisis after the other. And the greatest one was 2008, the financial collapse, or the banks going bankrupt. Every crisis of capitalism gave politicians, the political system, they gave them an opportunity to react positively, and they failed every single time. They did their best. They changed everything so that nothing changes. And of course, when you change everything so that nothing changes, things simply change in a malignant way. This is why Germany is deindustrializing. And I heard with my own ears the CEO of BMW, saying that, well, Europe is finished. We are investing in the United States and in China now. So we know that your narrow-minded pursuit of profit has become a major cost for society. This is why Europe has missed an industrial revolution. We cannot produce electric vehicles in this country or in Europe because we have not invested anything all these years. And all the notions of a European New Deal, of an investment program for Europe, an investment program that effectively channels funds into the green transition, into shared prosperity, kaput, finished, gone. And they chose to kill it off. And then all they're left with is guns and bombs and missiles and drones. They tell you this now in Brussels. You say to them, once upon a time, 5-6 years ago, you would ask the question, okay, how are we going to rebuild Europe? How are we going to consolidate Europe? What are we going to invest in? And they would talk to you about the Green Deal, which of course they never wanted to do and never did. But this is what they would, remember, Ursula von der Leyen, the Green Deal. Have you noticed they've forgotten about it? If you ask them now, what they say is, we will invest in the military business, in, the armaments business, in a military industrial complex for Europe, because we need to be secure. From whom? Putin cannot even get Donbass. He's struggling he's killing thousands of people to get a village next door. And he can't even do that. He has to destroy it. Like the US generals did in Vietnam. They had to liberate people by killing them. This is, and then you have NATO saying, we'll have to take Moscow because Putin is Hitler. Well, if Putin is Hitler, then why are we not all fighting against him? Because when there was Hitler, we all joined until he committed suicide in the bunker. But they're not doing it. They're sending guns so that the Ukrainians can take Moscow until the last one dies. So, in the process, they make a lot of money. And this is what they're doing here. This Munich Security Conference is a bizarre bazaar of weaponry. And we're here to oppose them.
Thank you. I think we can all very much relate to that, especially when we see this whole spectacle going on at the moment in Munich. But of course, we're here to also find out what we can do about it, right? We're trying to find out, trying to build something that is really rooted in civil society, in really the grassroots. But it's really difficult times for everyone, and because our topics today is solidarity as a radical utopia. Melanie, why do you think solidarity has become such a radical idea really in recent times in today's political climate?
First of all, thank you very much for organizing this, for hosting. Thank you all so much for coming. It's beautiful to see a room full of people who feel the same urge to come to discuss, to elaborate on what can we do, because it feels like we are in really dire times and it is threatening to all of us what is going on. And so just thank you all for being here and for taking the time. And of course, also a pleasure to meeting Yanis in person finally. And also thank you for giving me the space to talk about the situation in Germany and me as a candidate for the federal election. And I want to take one moment also to congratulate you, because I heard that 9 signatures were missing to make it on the ballot in Bavaria, which is great because it was such a short time. And I think you have done miracles to get all these signatures together. So to the Munich team of MERA25, chapeau. I think that was really amazing what you've put together. And, it's not about one election. It's not about one electoral cycle. It's about the movement that is here, is not going away, that is growing. And democracy doesn't mean to put your cross on the voting sheet once every 4 years, and that's what we are being taught, basically. But this is not what democracy looks like. Democracy is this, sitting here, doing the process. I mean, the signature process was, I have never heard of it before. And now after experiencing it in Munich, it's crazy. I mean, this is a bureaucracy monster. It produces 9 million pages, every 4 years in the whole cycle. It's also an ecological disaster. It's nothing of this is digital. It's just, and we all were surprised by the new upcoming elections. So, that is really great. And about the topic of our evening tonight. So finally, so solidarity nowadays has become an act of resistance and radical. And why is that? That's so strange, no? I mean, to be solidar, this is one of all of our core values, I think, as humans. We like to live in peace and harmony and be solidar with people around us. But because the system is dysfunctional and this system is grounded in division and competition, solidarity becomes a threat, because if you cooperate, if you are helping others out, if you are solidar with other people, other countries, then you are actually kind of threatening their system, which is built upon, as I said, like division, separation. And that's also why it's so important to stay here and to voice that, because in our opinion, another world is possible, a world, another now, as Yanis is framing it in the book, and they are trying to take that away from us, and that we cannot have hope. You know, many times people tell me, but why are you doing that? You know, it doesn't make sense. I mean, in the end, the ocean is made of drops of water, and so are we as people. And of course, it makes sense. It always makes sense to stand up for your values, to reach out a hand, to stand up for what's right. And now it's more important than ever, because we have more conflicts than we had internationally since 1948 or like 47, and this is a threat to all of us. And as we have seen, you know, our politicians are not doing their work anymore. They're getting paid for diplomacy, for resolving conflicts, and not for delivering weapons. We don't need politicians for that. And they're not even representing us, because 60 to 70% of German people are against, especially now, the Israeli genocide in Gaza, and to deliver weapons there. But yet they keep doing it, which also shows that we are talking about democracy, but what democracy is this if the elected people are not respecting the will of the people? And yeah, so I think we have to keep resisting in the form of solidarity. It's indeed, it's become radical, because our new norm is normalizing crimes and violence. It's we are being told now every day by the media and by the politicians that it is necessary to bomb people, to kill children because they're human shields, you know. But this is not necessary in no reality. It's necessary solidarity and standing up for people who don't have a voice.
And I'm very glad you mentioned also the process of getting enough signatures to be on the ballot here in Bavaria. I think it's really just so illustrative of this bureaucratic power, bureaucratic humiliation that we nowadays face in every aspect, and I think we really all have to stand up against this. But yeah, we've also touched upon. I mean, we're in Germany here, and really we wanted to talk a bit about Germany's own historical responsibility, but also a bit of denial that we see at the moment, because these phenomena have been described by so many after World War II, after the Nazi regime, and we're actually here in a quite historical part of Munich, where many of the first actions of the Nazi regime were orchestrated, but also resistance took place. And several buildings are really witnesses of this era. I actually work at the Academy of Science and Engineering, which used to be a tribunal of the NSDAP. But maybe back to nowadays. I mean, we've really discussed in MERA and in DiEM, and made really a lot of campaigns on that topic as well, around peace, around the Palestinian question at the moment. And it seems like, well, Germany and Europe, they still pride themselves on really having learned from history, and even with the far right gaining ground, I think we might face a moment that's dangerously similar to what some older people have already witnessed. Maybe to Yanis, what do you think are some lessons? What do you think is different now? And are there things that give us hope in that political climate?
Nothing gives us hope. Hope comes from within. It's the opposite of optimism. Optimism is for idiots, because there is no empirical evidence that things are good or getting better. So hope is something that like life, like creativity, like art, comes from within. So we have to hold on to it and to utilize it. So there is hope. We have hope. It's, it's in this room. Regarding the lessons of history, especially from Germany, as you were talking just now, I had this flashback to a German film. I remember it was by Michael Verhoeven, 1990. And it was called, I remember it in English now, it was called The Nasty Girl, or I can't even pronounce it, Schreckliche Mädchen, or something like that. It was a brilliant movie. Does anyone know this movie? 1990, Michael Verhoeven, a masterpiece. I'll tell you briefly what it's about. It's about a young girl who is the best student in her class in some rural town. And she wins a pan-German, West German at the time, essay competition. And she's celebrated by the whole town. And she's sent to Paris to send a report and so on. She comes back and she's asked by the mayor to write another essay. And she decides to write my village, my town, during the war. And she starts doing research. I won't tell you more, except that the story of denazification was always an incomplete one. It was always more about overshadowing the truth, overshadowing the processes that yielded Nazism and continued Nazism under different names, rather than truth-telling, rather than catharsis. And you can see this now. It's coming out again. You can see it that as all they do, the reason of state, for instance, what is this? As far as I'm concerned, it is simply an attempt which is subconscious for even most members of the establishment. The thing about this country is that nationalism, which is essential to the bourgeois order, to the ruling class, every ruling class, not just in Germany, everywhere, needs a nationalism as an organizing ideology of the wealth-seeking propensities of the ruling class. But in Germany, after 1945, nationalism was simply impossible because of the weight of the Nazi criers. So for me, the reason of state is simply replacing nationalism with Zionism. Zionism became the official religion of the ruling class in this country. Every time you hear, you see the weaponization of antisemitism, which is not really any attempt to fight against antisemitism. We fight against antisemitism. They use antisemitism in order to justify genocide. And it's no great wonder that it is happening now. Why? Because Germany is deindustrializing. Germany is now where Germany was in 1932. A process of steady decline in its capacity to reproduce its industrial capital. Volkswagen is finished. There is no way Volkswagen will ever compete again against BYD or Tesla. And they might do if they move to America or to China, but not here. And in exactly the same way that industrial decline, the failure of the left to assert itself, and the rise of discontent fueled fascism, that's what we have now. What happened last April in Berlin with the Palestine Congress of DiEM25 and the Jewish Voice for a Just Peace in the Middle East, the way we were attacked by the police, that some of us were banned and so on, that you can see fascism rising up, but not in the ultra-nationalist German framework, but in the Zionist framework. And for them, they don't really care about what's happening in Palestine, about Israeli Jews, about protecting Jewish life. We care about that. No, they care about having an organizing ideology. Their organizing ideology, the way to ban you, and you, is by calling you an anti-Semite if you don't support genocide. And the reason why at MERA25 and DiEM25 were so fixated with Palestine. It's not just that we have a moral duty towards any people, Jews, Arabs, Sudanese, doesn't matter who they are, who are suffering ethnic cleansing, apartheid and genocide, but also because what started in Gaza will not stay in Gaza. We already see it here. We see the weaponization of that. And finally, just one last word on this. You also see the parallelism between today and the 1930s in the speech today here in Munich by J.D. Vance, the Vice President of the United States. Compare and contrast with Joseph Goebbels in the 1920s. Because I spent a lot of time, I read every single speech that Goebbels wrote, delivered in the 1920s. Very instructive. And I want to make a comparison with J.D. Vance. You know what really is the similarity between Goebbels and Vance? That the beginning of their speech is brilliant. If you read or listen to J.D. Vance today, telling European leaders that what are you really worried about? Why do you feel insecure? Your greatest enemy is not some army out there that is going to invade your cities. Your greatest enemy is within, because you are banning freedom of speech. You are banning free democratic discourse. That's J.D. Vance telling Scholz today. It's true. It is what we say, right? Goebbels, 1920s, the beginning of his speech always was about the way in which the working class of Germany was exploited by big capital, big business, by the financial cabal, the shenanigans. Very good Marxist analysis of how the working class, that's Goebbels. And then, at some point, halfway in the speech, J.D. Vance and Goebbels then immediately turn to, and you know what the problem is. Goebbels, the Jew. Vance, the Afghan. Immigration, the foreigner, the other. So you can see that it is happening again. And it's because 2008 was our 1929. And it is, in the end, the failure of the left to stand up to this repetition of history, not as farce, but as tragedy.
Yeah, they're actually fooling us with the classical playbook that people can't seem to read anymore. I mean, yeah, it's really never really been this discontinuation of far-right networks in our state institutions. You've already said that. I mean, there's always been sort of a Brandmauer, a firewall against the left. We've had it very blatantly, probably last time during the Cold War, on communist activities. But now again, it seems that we're really hard hit by these discourses again, and this anti-leftist discourse. But Melanie, to bring it back to day-to-day activism, I mean, yeah, how does it affect you? This let's say this humiliation, this trying to really put great damage to any leftist movement that we have at the moment.
My first thought is that, the Brandmauer always worked against the left, but never against the right. So we have, we know that we have right-wing cells and circles within the police, within the military. There have been many cases exposed about that. Somehow it always worked against the left and is still very much in place. And the left party, especially in Germany, has always been stigmatized. They will never, on a federal level, they will never come out of their role that they are having there. So This, I think, is just a dead end to some extent. And also now, in the last year or 2 years, we have seen that they are also useless. You know, none of these parties are doing what is written on them. You know, like the left is not left, the Greens are not green, the Social Democrats are not Social Democrats. You know, I have to laugh when people ask me, what does MERA even mean? Like, what does SPD mean? I mean, they have betrayed us. So these values, I really feel, I feel betrayed by my country, by my upbringing. I feel betrayed by everything that I have learned. You know, I mean, I studied political science. I have a bachelor degree in that and law. And these last 2 years, I was mortified, horrified by what I've seen. You know, I feel so much shame and also then what you're faced with when you speak up now, you know, like it is really a complete failure of the society also itself, because we have these repressions in other countries too, in Italy, in France, but the people there are on the barricades, like they're going out, they're not tolerating this. But in Germany, once again, and when we were talking about parallels, this is another parallel to how it was back in the days, you know, when everyone who was saying this, the Germans were the Nazis were the best neighbors, you know, they were always nice and saying hi and then looking the other way when people were taken. And it's, of course, this is not, we're not in the same procedure, but it's just very, it reminds me of that because people, for example, with my activism, I mean, I know I'm a civil servant, so of course there are contradictions with this, right? But this is exactly why this is so important for me to speak up, to be loud, to be out there, because I want to show to so many Germans that are maybe afraid, because it is a sensitive topic for us growing up, that you know, when injustice becomes law, resistance becomes duty, and it becomes a duty for all of us, for every one of us. And if I may, I just want to also briefly, you know, say what I have experienced here in the last year. I mean, there have been moments precisely on the Palestine Congress in Berlin where I was also present, where I remember at the end of the day, I went to the toilet and I was standing there and thinking that I have to leave this country. This is mafia style. What is happening here? You know, it was shocking, but it was also, I was devastated, you know, mentally, because what they have done throughout the whole day, it was really, it has nothing to do with the rule of law. They have been trying with all means possible to stop this event from happening, and they knew they didn't have legal means for that. So they were pressuring the people, everyone around there, and in the end, they literally took out the energy. That's what they literally did, and it was so devastating and disappointing to see that. You know, I didn't recognize my country anymore.
Well, this is it.
I was just, I was just getting a little bit emotional because I'm seeing Ulrich there. And because we also shared some moments in Ulm and in Langenau where, you know, he's such a beautiful person and fierce defender of...
I stand up. Ulrich.
And thank you. It's you. And to see, you know, to witness what they have done to him also. You know, there are thousands of stories in the meantime, you know, so many where people they are going out and asking for human rights, for that Germany applies to the law, to international law, to like everything that we have been, I mean, socialized with. I have to say almost indoctrinated, but it would have been a good way when now it's all contradictions everywhere. I don't recognize these state forces anymore. And yeah, so, you know, seeing this over and over again, how they are disrespecting us, how they are framing it into guilt tripping, which is guilt has never led to justice. Guilt is a mechanism of control, and they are using this to control us and to justify the unjustifiable. It is not justifiable what they're doing. And today I had the chance to, with Yanis together, to speak on Democracy Now! And I was asked about my personal work situation. So, I don't know if you have seen it, but basically I have been expressing my opinion on an online platform. And then after that, I never saw my workplace again. And, this is... to me, this is, I'm in shock still about what is happening here for the last 1 or 2 years. And it's just incomprehensible that this is happening on our watch, and that we see it happening. We hear these stories and there happens nothing, On the day we went on a demonstration in Langenau together, there was a person standing on the window with a gun, pointing a gun at the demonstrators, and the police was basically ignoring that and treating us as if we are the criminals. We're being criminalized on every step that we take. Each demonstration in Berlin is really, you cannot see the demonstrators, there's a police row. It looks like they're taking people out of prison for a walk, that's how we look like. And I've told them countless times, this is not the sense of this is not the goal of a demonstration. No one will join these protests because you make us look like criminals. And then of course we have the Bild-Zeitung, and we have the whole complex that is working hand in hand together, because this is about militarization, it's about insecurities, it's about geopolitical interests, it's about economical interests, and they're sold to us by historical guilt, when this is really absolutely not the lesson that we should have learned.
And it's so sad to see so many people being tricked into thinking that we're actually criminals, right? So, this, and then at the same time, it feels very good to hear, okay, for example, Democracy Now! Is interested, and other international solidarity movements are really doing their job in being in solidarity with each other and reinforcing each other, supporting each other. Because fascism just thrives on division. For us picking the topic today is that the only answer can just be solidarity and sticking together and sticking to that hope that we still have, and that really is there intrinsically. Otherwise, we wouldn't be here today. Maybe, Yanis, you could tell us a bit more on your take on cross-border friendship, building a movement that's cross-European, really in this citizen solidarity with each other.
If you read any of the textbooks that our young women and men study at university in economics, I'm speaking as an economist for just one very brief moment, you find that the market, which is so celebrated, is being portrayed not as a market town where you buy tomatoes and you buy potatoes, right? No, but it's portrayed as a divine way of organizing life. And it is full of references to a Darwinian struggle for survival, where the struggle to prevail over the other, to be the one that lives against the other who dies, is what drives progress and, interestingly, social values. That's the social market, ordoliberal idea. Solidarity, in that sense, is the antidote to this vile, misanthropic conception of the world of humanity, as a struggle of all against all to survive through a process of survival of the fittest, or the most powerful, or the richest. So solidarity for us is not just an abstract notion. It is a bid for life, and a bid for a life which is worth living. That more generally. Now, to answer your particular question about the cross-border solidarity. Well, DiEM25 is the best example. Because it's not just cross-border solidarity, it's a no-border solidarity. So DiEM25 was the first movement that was created not as an internationale, not as an international, because remember the Communist International was what? It was a federation of, the German Communist Party, the French Communist Party, the Austrian, the Greek, and so on, but a federation. When on the 9th of February 2016 we created in Berlin DiEM25, we joined as comrades. Some of us happened to be Greeks, others happened to be German, others happened to be French. We didn't have a coordinating collective where, there was one Greek, one German, one Brit, one Irish. No. Whoever happened to be elected by all our members. That's the difference between transnationalism and internationalism. Internationalism is great, but genuine solidarity requires transnationalism. It doesn't mean that we don't care about our cultures, individual cultures. I'm very proud to be Greek. I'm a Greek patriot. Right? But a patriot loves her or his country without hating the others. And without thinking that it is better than the others. And so, in the same way I like my music, you like yours, I have my culture, you have yours. I have my language, which I cherish, you have yours. So what? The bankers and the fascists unite across borders. Isn't it time that we did? And this is why we created DiEM25.
Melanie, what's your take on this? How do you experience that no border solidarity in your daily activism life?
So I think that nationalism thrives on othering, on isolation and fear, and that's precisely what we fight with solidarity and with transnational movements. If we connect to the other, if we don't see the other as enemy, but as everyone, like every person with the same value and the same rights to life, right? So it's absolutely profound and important that this is the basic rule of us. And of course, this is, as said before, is a threat to the establishment because they want. They just want to keep upholding these three holy grails for them: the militarisation, capitalism, and racism. And that's what all of this is built upon, right? I think we also really need to talk about racism, and this is basically used as a tool here. And I mean, I think it's especially so. If you know me, you know probably that one of my main or most important issues is also the current genocide in Palestine, and the way how this racism now is so shamelessly expressed every day, and also just the daily racism by all sectors, by all politicians everywhere is it's key to the whole situation, I think, and that's of course something that we fight when we envision a world with no borders and all these fences of segregation.
Yeah, it's really true. I can also tell from personal experience, not of course being affected by racism, but having a partner who is Egyptian, and it's been such a brutal awakening actually since 7th of October in Germany, of this distrust, that not belonging anymore after 13 years probably in Germany. I mean, this is just, and Ramona already said it in the beginning, finding a home, a political home, right? So I just wanted to follow up with you, Melanie, on what makes MERA25 a real political alternative? Of course, not in the sense of alternative for Germany. We have to positively frame that alternative again. Yeah.
That word is burnt. It's negatively connotated and not usable anymore. Yeah, I mean, I probably can only talk from my personal experience, but so I only got to know MERA25 in the European Parliament elections last year. That was around the time where I also joined as a member immediately, and I'm just fascinated by it. I think this is the most beautiful movement that I have seen in a very, very long time. And I've never been politically active because it was never an option, because I couldn't pledge myself to any of the other parties because they were hypocrites to me. And now they're showing exactly that real face of them, that they don't care about the people, that it's profits over people, over lives. And that's something that I absolutely don't find with MERA25. And I think it's because of DiEM25 that's behind of it. It's the backbone, this movement that is a humanitarian movement that has such beautiful core values, and MERA is connected to it. And I think a lot of political parties nowadays, they don't have political theory anymore. You see the signs outside the vault says, let's go back to the future together. Like, what is that? That doesn't even make sense. And what is there? And then the Greens are saying, they put a picture of Annalena Baerbock and write down zusammen, like as if this one sentence makes sense. It's not a sentence even, it's like a word. And this it's offensive, I think, to us, to our intellectual, to our intelligence, that they don't even do, they apparently have so much money and so, I don't know, are bought by this, that they don't have to worry to even convince people of their program, because there is no program. There's only militarization. That's what it is, actually. And there are no values. They don't have values that they stand for. The Greens. So, I mean, I don't know if you followed up the supply chain law. That was kind of my specialty, that's my special field. This is also the reason why I started to study law, because I couldn't tolerate or understand that global corporations can just burn down an oil field in Somalia for 15 years and no one is paying for that, and like no one is bringing justice to the people that have been murdered or their environment has been destroyed. So I have to say this was in the last couple of years for me kind of a miracle that the global supply chain law, first in Germany, now in the European Union, was first in France actually, was adopted. But seeing that that Germany was the main reason why this law now on the European level was completely taken apart. It's now a shadow of what it used to be. It used to be a really strong, beautiful law for the global community, because let's face it, here in the European Union, we're one of the strongest economies. And of course, we are directly contributing to the exploitation of people in the global south predominantly. And so there was this law, and then there was also the forced labor law. And that the Germany, together with the SPD and the FDP, they were doing everything in their power to not make this law happen. And then you have to imagine it's about forced labor. So the Holocaust was mainly about forced labor. And that the German current state is able to block a law like this, and there's no public outcry, that no one talks about this. We talk about remembrance culture, and as Yanis was saying before, this is an empty shell. It's not true. We do not remember the past. We also don't respect it. We are actively working against necessary measures that have been taken to not do this to other people. So with the supply chain law, with the act against forced labor, and also, of course, now with completely spitting on international law. And international law was created as it is now. Only because of, or mainly because of the German history and crimes. And now we are basically making jokes about it. I mean, the Chancellor said today in an interview with Jung and Naiv, he was saying, he was asked so if he would be Chancellor for the next 4 years, and it might be that the International Court of Justice would rule that this was the genocide, what would he do, And he was just completely denying. This is like a toxic relationship, you know, where you're manipulating, denying, like you are gaslighting. He was 5 times saying, I'm not going to talk about this. This is not an option. This is not an option. And also, what is that? It's not a mature person. Like, this is, if you like want to be taken serious. But the worst about this is that it is not even seen critical, neither by the media, whose job that would be. They would have to criticize him for that. And that in the end of this charade, he was saying, this is absurd that there would be a genocide. I mean, every single human rights organization is by now saying this is a genocide. Every genocide scholar is saying this is a genocide. But the German chancellor of the Social Democrats has the audacity to sit there and say this is absurd. This is absurd, and this is complete parody.
It's parody, and oftentimes we laugh about these things because they're so absurd. As you said, it's really just you're there and you're just not believing anymore what you see in the news, right? And it's so important to call these things out, to wake up. But we also wanted to, because we have just very little time left in our talk today, just also end maybe with a more positive note, also from Yanis, what this movement, DiEM25, but also MERA25, what it means, like what are really its core fundamentals, its core values that can bring us back on track.
Well, the theme of the day today is solidarity. So I'm going to start with solidarity. I want to explain it further. We all understand it. It is the antidote to the dog eats dog. I'm sorry for saying this in the presence of a wonderful specimen. There, she's getting up. So solidarity, freedom. The greatest mistake of the left from the 1910, 1920 period was that we forgot that the left was all about, and the feminist movement, was about emancipation. It was about liberation. It was, women's liberation movement. It was the liberation of workers from the yoke of the capital's power over them. It was all about freedom. And we forgot that, and we swapped it for equality and justice, which essentially gifted freedom and liberty to the libertarians, to the liberals, to the ultra-right. And so you have now even Donald Trump talking about freedom, and we don't. The left doesn't. We have to talk about freedom. Freedom from what? Freedom from the power to extract from you things that you don't want to give up. That is what we need. This is the freedom that we're fighting for. And that means not only saying, oh, don't interfere with me, but in order to be genuinely free, you have to have options. You need to have access to options, access to basic goods like shelter, housing, health, education, so that you can say no to somebody who's trying to extract something from you on terms which are dehumanizing for you. So solidarity, freedom, and peace. And peace is not an empty word. In a world which is rushing headlong to war, with war being in the air, because it is, after all, war and fascism are the bastard children of a bankrupt liberalism.
Very well said, indeed. That was a very nice closing remark, actually, but we also still have time for a couple of minutes for your questions. And I believe there might be someone going around with a mic as well, but I can give you mine. Yeah.
Test. Anyone?
Yeah. Well, it's one of many, but I had to choose. So you mentioned, Yanis, you mentioned that DiEM is a transnational movement. So, yeah, getting rid of this borders, but then it is also a European movement. So it kind of shows its borders, but they're not the borders of Germany or Greece or Italy, but they're more the borders of the European Union. So, or I don't know, is it the European Union? Is it the Europe continent? So I want to know about this, and like why, what's the motivation behind this choice if we're truly a transnational movement?
Well, to begin with, we have a very relaxed definition of Europe. And when I say that, I mean it. And let me prove it to you. Only 2 nights ago, I was on a Zoom call with one of our branches in Canada, of Canadians, not of Europeans, of Canadians. So we have a New York branch, we have a Vancouver branch, we have a Los Angeles and San Diego branch, we have a branch in Argentina of Argentinians. We have, of course, in Palestine, we have Israeli comrades. We have comrades in Egypt. So we have a very, as I said, relaxed view of Europe. And it's certainly not the borders of the European Union. Damn that. As if it's going to stop before Serbia. No. Why did it start in Europe? Because it started in Europe. Because, we had a major crisis here. Some of us go together in Berlin because of the way in which the oligarchy in Germany and the oligarchy in Greece and the oligarchy in Portugal and the oligarchy in Italy got together in order to essentially practice massive austerity for European peoples and massive money printing on behalf of big business and big banks. So we started here. Then we took it a bit further, not only with DiEM branches all over the place, but we set up the Progressive International, which we were, the prime movers on. And now you have the Progressive International in The Hague, organizing the magnificent Hague Group, where 9 countries, governments from the Global South have signed a remarkable declaration committing themselves beyond the legal process to boycotting Israel, to making sure that no ship stops in any of their ports that is suspected of carrying fuel or weaponry or even goods to Israel. So we are practicing transnationality, but we had to start from somewhere. The manner in which that mentality has now spread to Colombia with President Petro, to Brazil, of course. We work very closely with the government of President Lula, even to parts of China where we have very good relationship with left-wing Marxist members of the Chinese Communist Party who are in the minority. I have to say that, right? So transnationalism is alive and kicking in DiEM25.
Okay. 2 quick questions. I'll try to summarize, and you can choose whatever you want to answer. One is about the role of Munich, of all places, in hosting the world's biggest so-called defense security conference for the merchants of death. And we know that it's more than just about business, but this is also a big business for Germany. It's probably also about other things like Ukraine is about the hegemony of the dollar and so on. The second question is, or maybe a bit of a challenging thing about, Melanie, you mentioned that Germany has changed over the past years. When I moved to Berlin about a decade ago, I came here specifically because I see Berlin and Germany as the last standing bastion for Zionism. And unlike other countries, there is a wall-to-wall support for Zionism in the Bundestag, in the community, in the society, etc. So I would argue that things have been very, very bad much earlier. So maybe you want to refer to that. Also, the role of the so-called left, Die Linke, in being at the forefront of actually the assault on Palestinian rights for many, many years.
Yeah, I will take the second question. Yes, of course, you're absolutely right. This has started way before, and it's not started now or 1.5 years ago or something. This is a long development. And yeah, I don't know. I can't pinpoint as to where it started. It's just maybe some, from my point of view, from a legal perspective, what has been very concerning. So in Corona, it was the first time when demonstrations were banned. And when I'm thinking about these protests, so for example, the G7 or G20 protests have always been facing what we are facing now. There has always been extremely brutal, a lot of police violence, a lot of indictment or hate speech against these groups, or the climate movement. I mean, climate activists are also criminalized here the same way. And this is precisely what you see. All these movements that are for solidarity, they are being just divided and criminalized on a very big scale. And I think here also we don't know how to talk to each other anymore, you know. And like, so for example, in 2015, people were called either Gutmenschen or Nazis, and it's not possible for us to have discussions about people having fear without calling them Nazis, or about other people wanting that everyone lives in peace without calling them, defaming them as Gutmenschen. And this went on in Corona. Then it was Schwurbler and queer thinkers, and that people have genuine fears is just being overridden. And I think this is a sign of a highly dysfunctional society that we are. And I think globally and nationally in Germany for sure. And I always think about it as a toxic relationship, like a violent relationship. You know, you don't get hit in the face on the first day. Like, it starts with little. At the beginning, everything is fine, and then there are some insults and some disrespect behavior, and at some point, you are in the hospital, you know. And this is also what's going on here now. Step by step, it's getting more and more bad. And now for me, of course, it's now so visible that it hadn't been visible before, because I wasn't involved in the other, maybe too much, you know, movements that have already been targeted. And it's, as Martin Niemöller said it, you know, first they came for the communists, but I was not a communist, so I didn't speak up. And then they came, and in the end, there was no one left to speak up for me. And that's what basically happens around this. But I just also want to say something positive that Yanis already touched on. Like, we have this at the same time, you know, with all the really worrisome things that are going on, the international movement for liberation and justice is amazing. It's so beautiful. Students are occupying universities. Workers are blocking weapons deliveries all over the place. And this is our power. And they know that, you know, the power really comes from the people. And that's why they spend so much money and effort, tax money and police officers, to silence us, you know, because this is precisely what is the greatest threat to the ruling class. And if we keep going, keep connecting in whatever way possible, like, for example, in the beautiful DiEM movement that has just all these connections that makes us stronger, and everyone can engage in every means possible. It's just really important to not get from all this pressure to stop having hope, because hope is what makes us human.
Well, I won't pretend to know how the Munich Security Conference evolved. It's been going on for a very long time. What I do know, however, is that every time capital accumulation starts having problems, big business is realizing that it can't reproduce itself. Weaponry becomes the last resort for a number of reasons. One is that it is very expensive. So it's really very easy to make a lot of money by selling missiles and so on, right? One missile is the equivalent of, 1,000 Volkswagens, right? So, obviously. Also, when used, it destroys a lot of capital stock, so that needs to be rebuilt. So that creates more demand. That has always been the case. But now we have something else. I don't know whether you've noticed, you've heard of a certain gentleman, Peter Thiel, the CEO of Palantir, who is far more dangerous and far more significant than Elon Musk. I urge you not to pay much attention to Elon Musk. He makes a lot of noise, but he's not significant. I can't see Elon Musk and Donald Trump remaining friends for very long, because two huge egos cannot fit in one room for very long. but Peter Thiel will always be there. And I mentioned Peter Thiel because Palantir. Have you heard of Palantir, his company? Do you know what he does? No. It's a software company which makes money out of defense and security. In other words, weapons, but linked to software, to what I call cloud capital, to algorithms, and security. That means surveillance, means Predator. It means all those apps which know what you will say before you say it, right? Now, Palantir is a small company, relatively speaking, and its stock exchange value, as we speak, you can go and check it in the Wall Street Journal, is higher than Lockheed Martin, that produces all the bombers, the F-35s. Because now warfare is becoming algorithmized, so the algorithms are going to be driving it. And let me give you a simple example, right? If the president or the prime minister of an imperialist country or a warmongering country wants to take out a city, they will have to order the Air Force to come out with their bombs to do what Netanyahu is doing in Israel, right? Go out there, 10,000-pound bombs, and so on and so forth. That's not an easy decision to make, even if you are a bastard. Yeah, and it's a big thing. Compare and contrast that, the kind of carpet bombing that we saw in Vietnam, which we saw in Iraq, which we saw in Afghanistan, which we now see in Gaza. Compare that to tiny drones about, the size of my palm. Imagine having access to 1 million of those. And each one of them can act autonomously based on AI with face recognition. And you can press a button and it goes through Munich and searches for selected targets. Melanie, you. And without touching buildings, it can kill, 100,000 people with names, addresses, and telephone numbers, which, of course, Israel has already been doing. I don't know whether you've heard of a vile application by Palantir and by the Israeli defense systems called Where's Your Daddy? Have you heard Where's Your Daddy? Yeah, it's similar. Now, these drones are much easier to deploy. You just press a button. It's no big thing. You don't destroy a whole city. It's a much easier, even ethically, morally, psychological decision to make. This is why Palantir makes. So what's happening here in Munich, the Munich Security Conference, is a major bazaar of these bizarre technologies. And this is what we're fighting against.
So we could have discussed for hours. I think there's so many topics to discuss, and more of them will be discussed at the peace conference, at the demonstration, the protest tomorrow, the anti-Siko demonstration. So unfortunately, because we have to also leave the venue at some point, we'll have to stop the discussion here. But first of all, I really wanted to thank our esteemed speakers for such great impulses, for such great perspectives. I think it's been a lovely debate. And yeah, I hope you took away some new ideas and also perspectives that continue nurturing the flame of your hope. To put it very romantically, because we're on Valentine's Day, of course. But we also wanted to say, well, we appreciated you being here. We appreciated a lot the organization of this event. I think there was Joanna, Ramona, Caro, Peter, Nadja, Blake, Chris, and I might have forgotten people who have also helped set up this really nice event. So thanks a lot, and forgive me if I've forgotten anyone. What I just wanted to say is that while you walk out and grab a drink and talk to your neighbor, in a speed dating fashion, let's say, just go to your neighbor, say, maybe not will you be my Valentine, but maybe will you free my Palestine? And you can...
Yeah.
And you can continue enjoying just for a little bit this evening, but we have to leave the venue at 9 p.m. sharp, which doesn't leave us that much time anymore. So apologies for that, but we really appreciated you being here and supporting this. Go see our websites, MERA25.de. Also look up stuff on DiEM25. You'll find lots of resources to be active. Thanks a lot.